Imagine surviving a decade of the deadliest street wars in modern Chicago. You beat a murder charge at just 16 years old. You outmaneuver rival factions on the expressway. You become a living, breathing legend on the South Side. But in the end, the threat that finally takes you down isn't a rival gang. It is your own fracturing mind. This is the unwritten, unauthorized history of Demetrius Johnson, known to the streets as DADA. Today we are dissecting an 11-year trail of violence tied to the notorious THF46 faction. We are going to track a timeline that begins with a teenager in a blood-soaked parking lot and ends with a 30-year-old man locked inside a steel elevator, unloading 10 rounds into his own best friend. If you want the sanitized, clean version of this story, you can go read the official police blotters. But if you want to know why this happened, if you want to understand the devastating, unavoidable collision of generational gang warfare, profound paranoia, and untreated mental illness, you have to listen to the streets. There are two distinct versions of Chicago. There is the city of record, the one printed in the morning papers, debated by politicians, and broadcasted by the evening news anchors. The city of record tells us the what, the where, and the when. But there is another Chicago, a city whose history is written on internet forums, debated in neighborhood alleys, and cataloged by the very people who have to survive it. This is the city of the streets, and in this city, the official reports mean nothing without the lore that connects them. When a life is taken on the South Side, the detectives arrive, the yellow tape goes up, and the files are closed, often without a single motive ever being typed into the official system. For the motive, for the connective tissue that turns isolated tragedies into a continuous, unbroken chain of retaliation, you have to look into the digital underground. Over the span of 11 years, from 2010 to 2021, Demetrius Johnson's name became entangled in a web of violence that spanned those two Chicagos. He was a phantom in the police reports, but a central, terrifying figure on the message boards. To understand the tragic culmination of his life, we must look at the ghost he is accused of creating. The timeline of violence begins in the sweltering heat of 2010. It was a year that saw the city's gang factions fracturing into smaller, hyper-localized neighborhood cliques. The era of massive citywide gang structures was ending, replaced by block-by-block warfare. On July 8th, a young man named Jamie Richards, known to his peers as J Money, affiliated with the Subaru 30 Town Crips, was shot and killed. If you look for a suspect in the official archives, you will find nothing. The police reports offer no narrative, and the local news briefly noted the loss of life before moving on to the weather. But if you venture into the digital archives of the community, the gang wikis, and the neighborhood breakdowns, a single name surfaces repeatedly: DADA. The streets claim this was pure gang retaliation, a violent stroke in a territorial dispute. But without a trial, without a confession, it remains a whisper, a rumor traded on Reddit threads like currency. However, just 4 months later, the whispers turned into a loud, undeniable siren. November 4th, 2010. The temperature in Chicago had dropped, but the tension on the streets had not. A 23-year-old man named Zontil Lemon, known as Pooh from the Bula gang, is sitting in a car in a parking lot. According to the lore that would later dominate the forums, this was not a random encounter. It was supposed to be a transaction, a meeting to inspect marijuana, a routine hustle that happens thousands of times a day across the city. The community narrative suggests that DADA, along with an accomplice, approached the vehicle, but they weren't there to buy. They ordered Pooh and his two companions to get out of the car. It was an ambush, a robbery masquerading as a deal. When Pooh refused to surrender his vehicle and his product, the standoff broke. Gunfire erupted in the confined space of the parking lot. Pooh was shot multiple times. He was pronounced dead shortly after. This time, the streets in the state agreed on the suspect. In January of 2011, Cook County prosecutors made their move. They charged Demetrius Johnson in adult court for the murder of Zontil Lemon. Dada was only 16 years old, a boy barely old enough to possess a driver's license, facing the crushing weight of the adult justice system. To be 16 and facing a murder charge in Cook County is to stare into an abyss, but the American justice system is built on the foundation of reasonable doubt. Despite the formal charges, despite the prosecution's efforts, and despite the dark legend growing on the streets, the state could not make it stick. Demetrius Johnson was ultimately acquitted. He walked free. He returned to the very streets that had nearly swallowed him whole. But the shadow of that parking lot on South Lake Park would follow him for the next decade. He was no longer just a kid from the neighborhood. He was Dada, the enforcer who beat the system. 7 years pass. The boy who beat a murder charge is now a man in his early 20s. The neighborhood dynamics have shifted, alliances have frayed, and the violence has only mutated. During these years, the internet transformed. Gang culture moved from the street corners to Instagram Live, YouTube, and Reddit. Every taunt, every alliance, and every tragedy was now documented, analyzed, and archived by thousands of anonymous watchers. The Chirac Kids subreddit became an open source detective agency. November 16th, 2017, the Dan Ryan Expressway, a massive 14-lane river of concrete that cuts directly through the heart of the city. It is a place of transit, not a place to hide. A 22-year-old man named Dashin Campbell, known as D-Day from the THF44 faction, is driving northbound near the 51st Street exit. Suddenly, the highway becomes a high-speed shooting gallery. Gunfire tears through the metal of his vehicle. Campbell is struck, his body goes limp, the vehicle loses control, and it violently crashes into the concrete barriers. Ambulances rush him to Stroger Hospital, but the damage is catastrophic. Dashin Campbell is pronounced dead. The mainstream media treated it as another incomprehensible highway tragedy. The news anchors read the teleprompter. Dashin Campbell, 22, hit by gunfire, crashed on the inbound Ryan. No suspects in custody. The official police records listed no motive. Some early street rumors pointed a finger at a rival gang known as 051YM. But years later, the digital detectives on Reddit would compile the fragments of street lore to paint a much more intimate and chilling picture. The community asserts that this was not a war between distant enemies. It was a fractured relationship between adjacent factions, THF46 versus THF44, a personal vendetta that boiled over and spilled out onto a major interstate at highway speeds. To execute a hit on the Dan Ryan Expressway requires a level of brazen ruthlessness that terrifies even seasoned detectives. Again, the police named no official suspect. Again, the system had no answers. And again, the legend of Dada grew in the dark corners of the internet. He was viewed as untouchable, a phantom riding the expressway, but no one is truly untouchable. Eventually, the mind keeps the score. If the first two acts of Demetrius Johnson's story are defined by street warfare, court battles, and unverified rumors, the final act is defined by a tragically well-documented mental collapse. By 2021, Demetrius is 30 years old. The trauma of the life he has lived is immeasurable. The friends he has buried, the years spent looking over his shoulder, the heavy crown of his own reputation, it has all begun to take a severe, visible toll on his mind. The armor was cracking. January 27th, 2021. It is a Wednesday afternoon. The official records from CWB Chicago tell us a terrifying preamble to the violence. Demetrius's own mother picked up the phone and called the police. She reported that her son was armed, out of control, and experiencing a severe mental episode. In the midst of this psychotic break, Demetrius is not confronted by a rival gang member looking for revenge. He is not ambushed by enemies from his past. He is approached by his own friend, Gino Dameron, a 26-year-old fellow member of THF46, known on the streets as Trouble. The user-generated forums fill in the agonizing details that the police blotters leave out. They claim Gino saw his friend spiraling. They claim Gino approached Demetrius in that apartment building and suggested he get a mental health evaluation. Gino wasn't there as a threat. He was there as a brother. He was trying to save his friend from himself. But in a state of deep chemical paranoia and mental fracture, Demetrius's reality was entirely distorted. He perceived a lifeline as a weapon. He perceived his friend as an enemy. A physical fight broke out between the two friends. The confrontation spilled out of the hallway and into the building's elevator as the doors closed, trapping them in a 6x6 steel box. The final tragic crescendo of Demetrius Johnson's story played out. There was no escape. DADA pulled his weapon. According to community breakdowns, Demetrius shot his friend a total of 10 times. When security officers finally forced the elevator doors open, they found the 26-year-old Gino Dameron dead on the floor. Demetrius Johnson, the boy who had beaten a murder charge at 16, the man whose name haunted the expressways and parking lots of the South Side, did not run this time. He was arrested the exact same day. The untouchable enforcer was finally broken, not by the streets, but by the demons in his own head. When we look back at the life and the alleged crimes of Demetrius "DADA" Johnson, we are forced to navigate the massive, painful space between legal truth and community reality. The American justice system requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. By that standard, many of the ghosts attached to Dada's name remain officially unresolved, but the streets do not wait for a gavel to fall to write their history. To the community that mourns Pooh, J Money, and D-Day, the lack of an official motive is irrelevant to their grief. The internet remembers what the archives forget, but the death of Gino Dameron forces us to look at an entirely different kind of tragedy. It strips away the glamorized lore of gang warfare. It removes the myth of the hardened enforcer and leaves us with the stark, ugly reality of complex, untreated trauma. It shows us a man so deeply broken by the violent environment he helped create that he turned his weapon on the one person trying to pull him back from the edge. The official records will log the dates, the locations, and the calibers of the bullets. The internet wikis will continue to debate the motives, the rivalries, and the street legends for years to come. But caught in the middle of it all are the families left to sweep up the glass, bury the young, and ask a question that neither the police nor the forums can ever truly answer. When does the cycle end?